Hello and welcome to News Centre. I'm Parikshit Luthra and here are the headlines we are tracking this evening. Market closes at the day's high with Sensex and Nifty gaining over 0.5% each. A surge in HDFC Group stocks sends Bank Nifty over 1% higher. Stock exchanges rescheduled the Eid holiday to Thursday, the 29th of June. The Nifty June series will now expire a day earlier on Wednesday. The biggest transaction in India's corporate history will become reality in 3 days. The merger of HDFC and HDFC Bank will become effective from the 1st of July. HDFC Chairman Deepak Parekh says the board meeting on the 30th of June to approve the merger will be its last. Adds he expects the HDFC stock to delist on the 13th of July and the merged HDFC Bank stock to start trading by the 17th. India's current account deficit for the January to March quarter disappoints, comes in at 0.2% of GDP versus market estimates of a current account surplus of 0.5%. Services export surplus comes in lower than estimated. Full-year current account deficit also comes in higher than expected at 2%. The market had estimated a deficit of 1.8%. Rohit Java takes charge as Managing Director and CEO of Hindustan Unilever after Sanjeev Mehta's retirement. A veteran at HUL, Java has a tough job at hand, navigating challenges like weak demand conditions and rising competition. Stakeholders raise concerns over the current discourse of the proposed digital competition bill. 58 organizations and individuals urge the government to hold an open consultative public engagement process while drafting the bill, urge them to get smaller stakeholders on board for more transparency. SEBI approves Tata Technologies IPO, the first public issue from the Tata Group after nearly 2 decades. It's an offer for sale where shareholders will offload up to 23.6% of paid-up share capital. Heavy rainfall expected across several parts of the country. Flood situation as Assam improves, but over 1.5 lakh still affected. Over 300 roads are blocked in Himachal. The Char Dham Yatra in Uttarakhand has been halted.
परिवार के एक सदस्य के लिए एक कानून हो, परिवार के दूसरे सदस्य के लिए दूसरा कानून हो, तो क्या वो घर चल पाएगा क्या? सुप्रीम कोर्ट डंडा मारती है, कह रही है कॉमन सिविल कोड लाओ.
And Narendra Modi speaks on the importance of the Uniform Civil Code, questions how a country can have different laws for different people while addressing party workers in poll-bound Madhya Pradesh. The Law Commission had recently sought views and ideas on the matter. Fixtures for the upcoming Cricket World Cup announced. The event kickstarts on the 5th of October. Host India will begin their campaign against Australia on the 8th and face Pakistan on the 15th. Both matches will be played at Ahmedabad's Narendra Modi Stadium. India's current account deficit for the fourth quarter of FY23 has missed expectations. The deficit number stood at 0.2% of GDP versus market estimates of a current account surplus of 0.5%. Latha Venkatesh joins us now with the details. Latha, take us through all the numbers.
Yes, that's right. Actually, a 0.2% current account deficit is something we would have grabbed with both hands at any point in time. But the point is, Jan, Feb, March, our services exports did so well that the earlier calculations from data given by Commerce Ministry showed that we may report a current account surplus of 0.5% of GDP. With that expectation, a minus 0.2% or a current account deficit of that order comes as a minor disappointment. The main reason is that services exports, the number released by the Commerce Ministry every month, seems to be a little higher than what has actually come to be. Those are, quick and dirty numbers. The cleaner numbers show that the services exports are more like $40 billion. The earlier Commerce Ministry numbers had indicated close to $45 billion of services surplus. But the overall deficit at 2% is not a serious disappointment. It's just a little more than the 1.8% for the full year current account deficit that the market was anticipating. Another minor disappointment has been FDI flows. FDI flows have come in at barely $6 billion in the last quarter. The year-ago quarter, it was over $13 billion. So it's less than half in the Jan-Feb-March quarter. But that was to some extent expected because we did see risk aversion FY22 had seen a lot of money from PEs and VCs coming into startups. That money has clearly dried up. So we should be prepared for, the capital flows in the current year in the form of FDI being a little subdued. However, overall, the expectation from economists is that for the current year, FY24, India will report a much lower current account deficit of probably 1.2% of GDP. So no worries really on this account.
All right, that's the story. We'll continue tracking very closely. We'll get you more reactions in the evening. But let's focus on India's semiconductor ecosystem for a moment. The Vedanta and Foxconn joint venture has modified and resubmitted an application for a silicon fabrication plant as per the new government guidelines. Sources have told CNBC-TV18 that the new application has been submitted under the 40 nanometer category, while Vedanta's earlier application was under the 28 nanometer category. In fact, IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav told CNBC-TV18's managing editor Shireen Bhan last week that the government had asked Foxconn and Vedanta to resubmit a fresh proposal, only after which an evaluation would be made.
On the Foxconn and Vedanta proposal, we have asked them to resubmit under the new window so that it can be evaluated afresh. And once they resubmit their proposal, we will be able to evaluate it and give the correct assessment.
All right, so we are going to see a lot of activity in the semiconductor space in India. Moving on, the fixtures for the upcoming Cricket World Cup have been announced. The event kickstarts on the 5th of October and hosts India will begin their campaign against Australia on the 8th. The men in blue will face Pakistan on the 15th. Both matches will be played at Ahmedabad's Narendra Modi Stadium. News 18's Kanav Bali is here with more.
The key takeaways from the official announcement is that the very first match between England and New Zealand will be played on 5th of October in Ahmedabad in the Narendra Modi Stadium. The two finalists of the 2019 World Cup will play the very first match this year in 2023 ODI World Cup. And after that, India's very first match is on 8th of October versus Australia in Chennai. Chennai will host the very first match of India in this year's ODI World Cup. Followed by that, India versus Pakistan, probably the much awaited match in this year's World Cup. India versus Pakistan will be played on 15th of October in Ahmedabad in the Narendra Modi Stadium. Apart from that, the two semi-finals will be played in Kolkata and Mumbai, and Ahmedabad, the Narendra Modi Stadium will host the final of this year's World Cup. The 12 venues for this year's World Cup have been announced today. We have 12 official venues, and for the very first time, Northeast India has got a World Cup warm-up match for the very first time in cricket history. Guwahati will host one of the warm-up matches this year. And apart from that, Virendra Sehwag and Muthiah Muralidharan, former Sri Lanka cricketer who were present in today's event, they said that their top four are England, Australia, India and Pakistan. And Sehwag thinks India versus Australia will be the final, whereas Muralidharan thinks that India versus England would be the final this year. So these were the key takeaways from today's official announcement. And I repeat, the much awaited match, that is India versus Pakistan, will be played in Ahmedabad in the Narendra Modi Stadium on 15th of October.
And a report prepared by Independent Commission for Equity in Cricket has highlighted widespread racism, sexism, elitism and class discrimination in English cricket. The 317-page report, based on evidence from over 4,000 players, criticizes the ECB for failing to recognize the extent of racism. Sanjay Suri gets us more.
A long-awaited report has found that racism, sexism, classism, elitism are rife in English cricket, and of course that determination is entirely in line with the experience, or at least observation, of many of us. But this authoritative conclusion from the Independent Commission for Equity in Cricket, following a 2-year investigation, is bound to shake up English cricket. ECB Chairman Richard Thompson has said, "We will now use this moment to reset cricket," and the commission was in fact set up by the ECB. The 317-page report, titled "Holding Up a Mirror to Cricket," has made 44 recommendations, and about the first of them being an apology. A number of the cricketers we see around gave evidence, among them England captain Ben Stokes, Joe Root and also Azim Rafiq, who emerged as the whistleblower on racism in cricket through his own experiences in county cricket. And the Commission has received such evidence from many, more than 4,000 responses. It found institutional racism, it found women treated as subordinate to men, and no surprise here at all, evidence of how cricket has been seen as a game of the upper classes, not as a game for everyone. Identifying the issues is one thing, fixing them is another, and we now await specific measures from the ECB following on from this.
All right. Thank you very much, Sanjay, for joining us with that important report. We're heading into a break, but coming up, government-backed open network for digital commerce targets 1 lakh transactions per day, up from 10,000 currently on the government e-commerce network. ONDC's MD and CEO T. Koshi speaks to CNBC-TV18 on the network's growth trajectory and international plans as well. Welcome back. You're watching News Center. Rohit Java has taken charge as Managing Director and CEO of Hindustan Unilever. This after Sanjeev Mehta retired from the role, ending his 10-year tenure. Java had joined Hindustan Unilever as a trainee in 1988. He was previously Unilever's Chief of Transformation. In his new role, the 56-year-old has a tough job at hand of navigating challenges like weak demand conditions, rising competition. Shilpa Ranipeta is standing by with more on the challenges that lie ahead for Java.
Well, starting today, HUL has a new MD and CEO in Rohit Java after a decade of Sanjeev Mehta at the helm. But before I get into the challenges, let me give you a brief background. Now, as an HUL lifer, Java has largely worked so far in Asian countries and this is through his career with a track record of mobilizing growth. Now, as the chairman of Unilever China, for instance, he made China Unilever's third largest business globally, and as chairman of Unilever Philippines, he led the business to become one of the top 10 markets for Unilever. Now, at the helm of a market like India, Java's road ahead comes with its fair share of challenges. Now, even as inflation slowly cools off in the country, near-term remains uncertain for the industry, and at HUL, he will have to bring back and drive a volume-led growth going forward and restore gross margins after years of sustained high costs. Now, consumer demand also is yet to recover fully, especially in rural areas. And while HUL has said that the worst is behind us, dangers of erratic weather and an El Nino forecast continue to threaten rural recovery. And at the same time, competition has also intensified, especially with Reliance's FMCG foray and a whole host of D2C brands. Now, experts also say for HUL to get into its next leg of growth, scaling up recent acquisitions will remain key, while also continuing to eye more inorganic opportunities. Back to you.
Right. Thank you very much, Shilpa, for telling us about the new Unilever CEO as well. Thank you very much for being with us here on CNBC. Let me move on to CNBC-TV18 exclusive. Government-backed open network for digital commerce has set a target to achieve 1 lakh transactions per day, up from its current figure of 10,000 transactions per day. Speaking to me, T. Koshi, Managing Director and CEO of ONDC, said they are looking to branch out their business overseas and they expect Singapore and Middle East to use ONDC soon.
6 months since we have started triggering the making ourselves visible widely, we have seen significant amount of growth in the early segments that we came. We started with grocery and food, and then we added mobility into it. And in the last 6 months, we saw mobility going through the roof. For our kind of startup, which is just 6 months old, we are seeing something like 50 to 60,000 transactions rides a day, and closely followed by food and of course grocery. And then we are seeing the goods part of it, which is doing, it has reached a peak of more than 30,000 a day and averaging about 15 to 25,000 every day. And it is sort of building up in a step-by-step building is happening. Merchants was in January, which was like something about 800 merchants, and now about 45,000 merchants on the good side, and like I said, in the right side, more than 60,000. So we are seeing momentum building up, and we are also saw the additional categories coming in, but they are too early. And we saw Adi very interesting participation coming from, for example, a logistics player coming and say that I'm going to enable all my sellers with whom I have a relationship to be visible in the market network. So you're seeing innovation, and we are seeing specializations happening, and these things together to sort of drive the market significant in the coming few months.
Mr. Koshi, what has been your target? How many transactions do you expect to take place per day, maybe in the next 6 to 7 months, by the end of the year? What are some of the targets that you're working with?
By end of the year, what we are trying to do is something like 100,000 transactions a day, and which will sort of give us confidence, because it will build up the same momentum. See, one thing that is a transaction means one thing, more buyers have to be familiar, and the sellers have to get used to this digital etiquette. And as we said, in addition to the big guys who are already there from one side, HUL on the one side and P&G on the side, those kind of things, but we are giving significant focus as a demonstration to small and micro enterprise, like Kudumbashri, which is a SHG group from Kerala, or some Mandeshi Foundation from, or Azol Foundation for lady SHGs from Bombay. All of them are being given a lot of priority to demonstrate, and we are seeing build-up happening.
How many MSMEs do you have on the platform right now? How many would you like to have by the end of the year?
For example, I have not taken a fixed target on the MSME tech. The thing is, we are planning to see at least 30% of the merchants who are coming out should not have been ever digital. That's the way I'm putting myself a pressure on me. Because many MSMEs, like we said, they are digitally familiar, they're doing some kind of transaction. First time digital e-commerce transaction, 30% of should come from us is what we are trying to do.
Right. What is the daily monetary volume of transactions that are taking place?
To be very honest, I don't know. The reason is, as you would have said, we are a network, and we do not try to track, and each of the platforms have their own transactions, and we don't ask them the value of transaction. We only, as a measure of health, we only look at the diversity of transaction which we publish.
Right.
Because there's no, please remember, there's no central system where everything is coming. It is a truly democratic network and not a platform.
What is the biggest or most common complaint that you're getting right now? Which are some of the biggest teething troubles that you're trying to overcome?
See, the biggest teething trouble is, like I said, when you're trying to encourage small micro enterprises, their ability to respond with the speed and alacrity as well as with the finesse for the expectations, because most of the early adopters on the buying side are more sophisticated buyers who have been anyway using something else. So they have very high benchmarks. So when you imagine a small entrepreneur who sort of has to reach that one, is one of the early challenges that we're seeing. So because of that, we need to have a continuous effort to educating them and improving their processes. And if you really ask us, we are really small, okay? So the number of complaints are practically very, very few. And most of it, the complaint is like, they're anxious because they're trying to do something. Hey, where's my order? You said it will, even if you say it will be available the next day, they'll call in the evening 2 times. So, but there had not been any delivery, very few delivery related issues. Of course they came. I'm not saying, if I say don't, I'll be lying. But the good thing is, all these cases, the merchants resolve those issues. There's not, till now, touch wood, we have no disputes. Of course, we had people complaining and getting sorted out.
I would also like to ask you about what about international operations? What about international trade, connecting the buyers and sellers on ONDC in the domestic market to international markets? What is the plan?
See, the way that we are looking at currently the whole network protocol enable domestic transaction, and we are almost in the final stages of completing the necessary protocol for international transaction. So what we believe, and we will definitely be able to demonstrate proof of concept in the next few months by having international buyers from buying from India. But in addition to that, then it's all question of demand build-up. So we are also, I'll just give you 2 examples of how we are trying to help the enterprise from here to be internationally visible. For example, Dun & Bradstreet, they said they're going to issue a Dunn's number to every seller. So let's say if you're a buyer, Mustafa from Singapore, trying to reach across and see a Durga silk, they might be first question, hey, I haven't heard. But if they see something like a credible, name there. Similarly, we are working with the Quality Council of India to give a, certification for the small enterprises. So essentially what we are trying to do is giving a confidence to a broad cross-section of buyers, whether starting within India and internationally, that they are dealing with respectable entities with a history and with somebody to endorse on. And that is the reason we are also working with Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprises, SIDBI and NABARD, etc., to act as an enabler of the small enterprises and endorse them. So we believe these kind of things will see demands coming in.
So which countries would you launch the pilot in the first phase?
So there's nothing called country. It is actually we'll do, they have to just buy. So once we say it is possible, the buying application is there, they will be able to. And I suspect one of the early adopters could be from people like Singapore or even Middle East, etc., where we have, our diaspora there. And if you know that Singapore has already adopted UPI, and I'm sure that they will find ways to, enterprises there will take advantage of reaching across to this network. There is no need to some special connection. We have to make sure that documentation, there are logistics players who will do international documentation as well as international supply. So all those will be available in the next few months, and we believe that this is where they will start figuring it out.
Right. Any major priorities that you would lay out for us from an ONDC perspective, something that you are working towards to scale up the acceptability and the penetration of the platform?
See, what we are trying to do is we are trying to get a broader cross-section of buying applications who already have a large digital customer base and work closely with them to stimulate demand. And secondly, work with some of the large enterprises, like, for example, even like Foodside, McDonald's, and those kind of people who see the benefit of being a part of this large network, also stimulating demand for their products, which anyway they're doing, and say that, hey, come to ONDC, that's a new channel, we want to support it and we will give you better prices.
And moving on, the government's e-marketplace has grown nearly tenfold growth in terms of volume over the past 3 years. The portal recorded volumes of 38,000 crore rupees 2 years ago and is likely to touch 3 lakh crore rupees this year. My colleague Abhimanyu Sharma caught up with Prashant Kumar Singh, the CEO of government's e-marketplace, and began by asking him about what are the new goals for the portal.
You see, our only endeavor is to make GEM a gold standard in government procurement. I would not say that we are there because there are still a lot of things to be improved upon. But the good thing is that we are aware of all that. In terms of volume, yes, we have done decently well because about 2 years back we were at 38,000 crore. Last year was about 1 lakh crore, and last year was 2 lakh crore. And as you heard the Honorable Minister say that this year probably we may touch 3 lakh crore. So almost a 10x growth in the last 3 years. So that has been the story in numbers. But then yes, the process improvements come along with it. We have been tirelessly working towards making the experience more user-friendly for the buyers as well as sellers. Try and take suggestions from the stakeholders and improve on our systems. And going forward, as the Minister mentioned, we have engaged a new service provider also for managing and running the portal, and which happens to be the largest IT company in India. So that is the attention that we are attracting, and I hope that the days are very good ahead.
Coming to a question which has been asked multiple times, and of course I'll ask that again, when are you possibly looking at opening up for the general public? Because we understand the government has had a really good experience so far, barring a few niggles and a few feedbacks here and there. When are you planning to open to the public? What are the hitches you need to encounter before you possibly look in that direction?
My answer continues to be the same, because we have the mandate to serve the government at the moment. But yes, we may pick up certain categories and open it to others also. But as I mentioned to you earlier, that government is coming with an initiative of ONDC as well, wherein our sellers who are on GEM can sell to people at large through the platform of through the network of ONDC. So that's also being worked at.
Right. The next priority for the government e-marketplace would be to have closer integration with state governments as well. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of News Center. More news and updates continue right here.